I want to talk about the myth of one nation under God. We see that on our currency, right? One nation under God? Well, like John said earlier, which God are we talking about here? You know, in our Judeo-Christian way of rendering God, we typically capitalize the G, right? Little O-D. And pagan gods, it's usually all lowercase. Well, if you look at the way our country renders it, it's all in caps. Convenient. So, you know, whenever a political leader, you know, starts saying, yeah, I believe in God. Okay, yeah, that's cool. Which God are we talking about here? Let's narrow that down. Isn't it interesting how political candidates all of a sudden find Jesus on the campaign trail? Oh, Trump's a Christian, or this guy's a Christian. Oh, really? Okay, sure. Anyway, yeah, I think there's two gods at least that our country is obsessed with. And I'm going to suggest that it's Osiris, maybe three. Osiris, Zeus, and Apollo. But most notably, if you think about our founding of our nation, it's all about 13, isn't it? 13 colonies, 13 stripes, 13 stars, 13 this, 13 that, the Great Seal of the United States, 13 steps on the Great Pyramids, on the Great Seal of our... What the heck is an Egyptian pyramid doing on our currency in the first place? Right? What does that have to do with anything about our nation? Yeah. And by the way, that's not an eagle there either. Manly P. Hall, one of the most prolific writers of Freemasonry, says anytime they depict an eagle with a point on the back of its head, it's really a stylized phoenix. Aha, we fooled you. It's not an eagle. It's a phoenix. In Egyptian mythology, the phoenix was the Benu. The Benu was the dying and resurrecting soul bird of Osiris. Okay? 13 steps on the Great Seal's pyramid, 13 letters in the Latin phrase Annuit Coeptus, 13 letters in E Pluribus Unum, 13 stars above the eagle's head there in the shape of the Star of David, which has nothing to do with David. That's a whole other lecture. 13 bars on the shield, 13 leaves on the olive branches, 13 arrows, 13 original colonies, 13 stars, 13 stripes on the original Betsy Ross flag. Have you heard about the Betsy Ross flag? The myth? Yeah, Betsy Ross hooking up with George, and oh yeah, let's get a new flag going for the country, right? Rah, rah. Nonsense. If you go look up on history.org, history.org just comes right out and tell you there's no evidence whatsoever that suggests that Betsy Ross had it, other than the fact that she was a flag maker. She did make flags. But there's no evidence whatsoever that she's the originator of this design, even though that's one of the myths that we've all been taught growing up in school. History.org goes on to continue. We do, however, have a good idea about who originated the design. Credit for that achievement may go to Francis Hopkinson, a New Jersey representative to the Continental Congress and signer of the Declaration of Independence. Hopkinson was a talented man with a strong interest in designing symbols. See, symbols conceal for those who don't have eyes to see, and they reveal for those who do have eyes to see, which means all of the iconography contained within a symbol has to harmonize with itself for it to have a coherent message. This guy is all about designing symbols. He's the guy that designed the Great Seal. Oh, okay, Great Seal. Pyramid of Egypt, Phoenix, dying and resurrecting soul bird of Osiris. 13, he's the guy that designed our flag. I was in the Army for 6.5 years, and I was, actually 8 years, part of it was inactive. And I was, for a period of that time, I was in the Honor Guard. And I was the guy in the full dress blues, and I carried the American flag with tremendous pride. That was like a real honor for me to do that. And I took great care in doing it, trying to do everything right and be as sharp as I could be. I cannot even look at that thing anymore. And I certainly am not pledging allegiance to it. No. Sorry, love my country, but patriotism, at least the way it's currently defined, is idolatry. And if you really get into what that flag actually represents, especially going all the way back to its founding, I want nothing to do with it. That's just me. I'm not telling you what to do. I wrote a whole section of it in my book, but I'm just telling you, was a Boy Scout, was an Army, patriotic, rah-rah, as hard as they, hardcore as they come. So, it's a lot for me to say this, that now I just can't do it. For, I think, a really good eye-opening series of videos for you to watch, if this information is new for you, I would highly recommend you check out Chris Pinto's documentaries, The Hidden Faith of Our Founding Fathers especially. Oh, our Founding Fathers were Christians! No, they weren't. They were deists. They were Freemasons. They were Illuminists. They were members of the Hellfire Club. These guys were occultists. They happen to know our Christian lingo. They really got boned up on the Christianese. But Scripture says we know them by their fruits, not by their campaign slogans. Okay? Great video for you to check out. It also counteracts some of the videos by, what's his name? Barton? I can't think of David Barton, Wall Builders. Now, I was sucking on that Kool-Aid for a while, and I watched those videos and was all about, yeah, look at all this stuff, it's great. No. David Barton selectively picks quotes that make our founding fathers look like Christians, but he conveniently leaves out a whole ton of other information that would say otherwise. And actually, about the last hour of that video that Chris Pinto did is Chris Pinto taking on David Barton straight on for about an hour. I don't know if David Barton's just naive or, if it's innocent or if he's got an agenda. I don't really know. I'm not going to make a judgment on the man. But I can tell you, after doing my own research on our founding fathers, it doesn't jive with what Wall Builders is all about, in my opinion. The other videos you need to watch are The New Atlantis, Riddles in Stone, and Eye of the Phoenix. All four of these are outstanding documentaries by Chris Pinto, many of which I think you should be able to find just doing a Google search. So, as a result of my own research in this, I really felt like I took the red pill, if you know what I mean by that. Then I decided to go to Washington, D.C. Now, I have been to D.C. many, many times in my life. I grew up in Massachusetts. I lived up there for over 30 years of my life. Used to go down to Washington, D.C. for field trips and stuff. One of my friends that I met when I was in grade school, his dad was in the Air Force, so he was stationed near where we lived in Massachusetts. Then his father got transferred and ended up living down in the Washington, D.C. area. So a lot of times I would go down and visit my friend Dwayne down there. I've been to D.C. many times. We'd go to the Smithsonian, we'd go to the mall, all the monuments, all the time down there. Didn't see a thing. Until you take the red pill. When we did go down there after having taken the red pill, for the first time going there after that, I only had 5 hours to spend there. I mean, you can take 5 hours just to go through one small section. I mean, so we had to be really deliberate about where we went and what we did. And so first thing I want to point out is Washington, D.C. What does D.C. stand for? The District of Columbia. Who's that? Well, she's perched on top of the Capitol building. As Tom Horn says, that the womb of Isis, right there. Because you always have this motif, don't you? You have the obelisk and the womb and the reflection pool that connects the two. And that shows up in many different places around the world, but certainly in Washington, D.C. And you see right there, Columbia. Underneath her, she's standing on a ball. It says E pluribus unum. Anybody remember what that means? Out of many, one. Well, all the symbols all the iconography within a symbol has to harmonize with itself, right? What were you taught E pluribus unum represents? What does out of many, one represent? Oh yeah, diversity of people, the melting pot, right? Many ethnicities, many states, all one nation, blah, blah, blah. Here's the blue pill. Well, when you walk into the Capitol building to go through, they have a tour, a guided tour through the Capitol building. You walk into the visitor center, you're greeted by the original sculpture that the one on top was cast from. So you have this huge statue right there when you walk in. And we went into there's a movie theater right off to the right here. And you watch this real patriotic movie about the construction of the Capitol building and, everything, the beginning of the Capitol building and blah, blah, blah. So it's all this nice patriotic music and all this Americana scenery and blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden this text goes across the screen, big text, the Temple of Liberty. That's what I said. I turned to my wife and said, temple? What are temples for? Worshipping gods. Which god? We just passed her in the hallway. She's in Scripture called the Queen of Heaven. She's also known by many names, just like Nimrod was. Why? Because they were together. She was in many ways just as diabolical, in some cases perhaps worse, than Nimrod was. Because she's the one who perpetuated a lot of the myths and created a lot of the myths and stuff after he died. But she became known as Semiramis, Ishtar, Isis, Columbia, Liberty, Diana, Venus. Well, all of a sudden, this makes more sense now. Out of many names, one entity. One person with many names, out of many one. Yeah. Again, the iconography has to harmonize. We're looking at the Queen of Heaven. It has nothing to do with many ethnicities, 13 colonies, many states, one nation, all that nonsense. When you walk into the Capitol Dome area, the Rotunda, you walk in there and you see all these nice paintings on the bottom there, real pretty paintings of Americana. Yeah, it all seems very innocent, very, Christian heritage, yeah. The problem is the further up you look into the womb of Isis, the worse things get. I mean, it just, that's all. This is the distraction. This is the eye candy on the ground here. You keep looking up and wow, okay. Even before you see this, I forgot to put the slide in here, but there's the frieze of American history. And it starts with, I think it starts with Columbus. It goes all the way up to the Wright brothers' first flight. And you don't get too far past Columbus when you see Cortez and Montezuma in the Aztec calendar stone. You're like, what? I mean, everything else, pilgrims and all the stuff that we, United States of America type history stuff. But then you just got this tucked in there. You got the Cortez and Montezuma in the Aztec calendar stone and a serpent wrapped around the pole deal. And like, what is this? You look past that, look a little higher, and you have 72 pentagrams. 72 is another one of those high occult numbers. 72 pentagrams. And a pentagram in the occult is a binding utility for controlling demons. That's what it's for. And inside of all the 72 pentagrams, you have the apotheosis of George Washington. The painting of the apotheosis of George Washington. This is supposed to represent heaven. George, or Christian founder. How many pictures have we seen of George taking a knee and praying, right? Because nobody asks, who's he praying to? Good old Christian George, right? George is in heaven. Well, if it's the Judeo-Christian understanding of heaven, don't you think we might see, I don't know, Yeshua there maybe? Moses, somebody? Abraham? Somebody? No, we see Neptune there. We see Ceres there. We see Vulcan there. We see Minerva there. We see Liberty or Columbia there. That's my favorite one. We see Mercury, the messenger of the gods, and our founding fathers seated at his feet taking notes in our Christian founded country in this depiction of heaven. Wow. Oh, by the way, what does apotheosis mean? Anybody know?
Exalted to God-like rank.
Essentially, yes, exactly. The deification of man to godhood. George, deified in heaven. Deified as Zeus. I don't think I put the slide in this presentation, but shortly after he died, there was a government commissioned statue of George. Oh, I think I do have it in here. I'll show you that in a minute. Yeah, I do have it here. He's as Zeus. Now, before I show you what I was going to just talk about just now, when we went there by train, we got to the train station, and we walk out of the train station, and I look up at the roof of the train station, and the whole roof is lined with pagan gods. The whole roof of the train station. This is the far left of the building, right here. You got these two individuals there. The one with the Mithra cap right there, it's probably Ceres because she's holding the plants right there. And you got the Zeus over here on the left. And in between the two of them, boy, let me see if I can read this anymore. It says, fire, greatest of discoveries, enabling man to live in various climates, use many foods and, my eyes are going back. Use many foods and compel the forces of nature to do his work. Electricity, carrier of light and power, devourer of time and space, bearer of human speech over land and sea, greatest servant to man itself unknown. Thou hast put all things under his feet. Well, that's interesting. I mean, you throw a little scripture in there, but, well, in scripture, who has God put all things under whose feet? God put all things under his son's feet. But God, in this case, is Yahuwah. Put all things, right? Problem is, that's Zeus right there. And they're throwing scripture. Now let's put all things under his... What? Yeah, here's the statue that I was talking about of George that was commissioned. Okay, now this is tucked away. This used to be out in public. They tucked it away now, and it's still viewable. You can still go and see it. But it's Zeus seated on a throne, posing as a god in the same pose that he's there, on the apotheosis of George Washington. Well, who's he posing as? Zeus. This is an artist representation of one of the seven wonders of the ancient world, the Temple of Zeus, and the great statue of Zeus sitting there. And in case you're doubting that, on either side of his throne are two individuals, Hercules and Apollo, which are sons of Zeus. So we have George depicted with a government-sponsored and paid-for statue as Zeus. Oh, by the way, he's also doing the same symbols as Baphomet, the high occult symbol of Luciferian, love. What state was it that just put the statue of Baphomet up in
Detroit?
Detroit? Yeah. It's like, here, go sit on the lap of Baphomet. Wow. All right, so we see regarding the end times, Yeshua gives some interesting warnings regarding the Antichrist. He says, "Then if any man shall say unto you, Lo, here is Christ, or there, believe it not. For there shall arise false Christs and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch that if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect." Then he says, "Behold, I have told you before." Now, pay attention. That's what that verse right there is meant to convey. He says, "If they shall say unto you, Behold, he is in the desert, go not forth. Or, Behold, he's in the secret chambers, believe it not." In the desert? Gilgamesh was found in the desert. Secret chambers? The tomb of Osiris was found in Egypt. Believe it not. In other words, if Christ originates in this scenario, pay attention, I'm telling you this in advance. Don't believe it. This is what you should be looking for. "For as the lightning cometh out of the east and shineth even unto the west, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be." That's what we should be looking for. Then there's this interesting verse right here. "For wheresoever the carcass is, there will the eagles be gathered together." Now, I've heard many different teachings, and all of them are very compelling teachings that I've heard regarding this passage. But as I was doing this study and researching this, I just so happened to look over and had some photographs on my desk of both my military careers as well as my father's, but my dad was also in the military. And I'm thinking about my time in service, and I'm going, wow, wait a minute. I was covered in eagles from the top of my head to the bottom of my feet. Eagles on my patches, eagles on my hats, eagles on my buttons, eagles on my shoes, eagles everywhere. And right after we find the body of Gilgamesh in the desert, what did our eagle-wearing soldiers do? We went right to Iraq and started looking for all kinds of stuff dealing with resurrection in the afterlife. So could it be? A lot of people ask in prophecy conferences and stuff, where's America? We're the world superpower, supposedly, at least for now. Where are we in end times prophecy? Well, speculation, but I'm wondering if that's not us. Bearing in mind how our country is represented by the eagles, and I began to think about, okay, he talks about, if they say he's in the desert, don't believe him. If he says he's in the secret chambers, don't go there. And yet we have a whole bunch of eagle-wearing guys surrounding a body pulled out of the desert sand, and a resurrection chamber that just so happens to be available for future use. I don't know. Speculation. So as we were winding down our trip, and I could have stayed there for a lot longer. I was like, we need to get back. But there was one thing I wanted to see if I could find that I'd heard about. And I also remembered on the other end of the train station, on the left side was Zeus and Ceres and all that. On the right side of the train station were two eagles with points on the back of their head. Okay, so we know what that means, right? Those are two phoenix. In between them it says, "Let all the ends thou aimst at be, thy countries, thy gods, and truths be noble, and the nobleness that lies in other men, sleeping but never dead, will rise in majesty to meet thine own." Kind of cryptic. What does that mean? I don't know.